There's a moment most men never understand until it's too late. It's the moment a woman stops hearing from you and starts hearing her own thoughts instead. Because as long as you keep showing up, texting first, checking in, reacting to every story she posts, she never has to wonder about you. You become predictable, accessible, safe in the most dangerous way possible. But the second you disappear for real, something changes. Not immediately. That's the part most men get wrong. They think silence creates instant panic. It doesn't. In the beginning, your absence feels small, almost invisible. But psychologically, something much deeper has already started moving beneath the surface. And once that process begins, her mind starts doing what your attention used to prevent her from doing. Thinking about you. See, the human brain has a strange relationship with certainty. When something is constantly available, it fades into the background. But when access is removed without warning, attention sharpens instantly. Now suddenly you become unresolved, and unresolved emotions are incredibly difficult to ignore. That's why the man who disappears with composure often creates more emotional impact than the man who constantly tries to prove his value. Because chasing rarely creates tension, absence does. This is exactly why some women can forget 10 guys who pursued them endlessly, but still think about the one man who quietly pulled away without explanation. Not because he manipulated her, because uncertainty stayed alive in her mind. And over the next few days, that uncertainty begins evolving in ways most men never notice. Day 1. Almost nothing happens. Seriously, if you disappear today, she probably won't react the way you imagine. No dramatic message, no emotional confession, no sudden realization that she's losing you. At first, she assumes your behavior still revolves around her. Maybe you're busy. Maybe you're waiting a few hours before texting. Maybe you're trying not to seem too available. But in her mind, the connection still feels secure because she expects the pattern to continue eventually. And patterns matter more than people realize. If you've been consistently present in her life, her brain starts treating your attention like background noise, something stable, something guaranteed. That's why your absence doesn't hit immediately. Imagine living next to a clock your entire life. At first, you hear every tick, but eventually, your mind filters it out completely. Then one night, the clock suddenly stops. And somehow, the silence feels louder than the sound ever did. That's the psychological shift beginning to happen here. At first, she doesn't feel loss. She feels interruption. But interruption is where attention begins. And this is exactly where most men sabotage themselves. They disappear for a few hours, feel anxious, then come rushing back looking for reassurance. The problem is, she never had enough time to actually feel your absence. She was still emotionally comfortable, still convinced you'd return like everybody else always does. But when you don't, that's when the second phase begins. Day 2 and 3 are where curiosity quietly enters the picture. Not obsession, not longing, curiosity. And curiosity is far more powerful than most men understand, because the mind hates unfinished stories. Now she notices little things. Your name no longer appears on her phone. You stopped reacting to her posts. The usual rhythm between you suddenly feels off. At first, she tries to dismiss it. But the brain automatically searches for explanations anytime expected. Behavior changes unexpectedly, especially when emotions were involved. This is when she may start checking subtle things without even realizing why she's doing it. She posts something and unconsciously notices whether you viewed it. She checks if you're online. She wonders if you're talking to someone else. And the strange part is, the less information she has, the more active her imagination becomes. That's the danger of silence. It forces people to create their own answers. Think about losing your phone for a second. The first few minutes, you stay calm because you assume it's nearby. But as time passes and you still can't find it, your brain starts replaying every detail. Where did I last have it? Did I leave it somewhere? Did something happen? That mental replay is exactly what begins happening in her mind now. Because for the first time, she can't fully predict you anymore. And unpredictability creates emotional tension. By the end of day 3, a quiet question starts forming beneath the surface. Wait. Why hasn't he come back yet? But even then, she usually won't reach out, not yet, because her ego still believes you'll fold first. Which is why day 4 and 5 become the turning point, when noticing your absence slowly turns into actually feeling it, because now the silence feels intentional, and that's the part that starts getting under her skin. At first, she believed you'd eventually crack. Maybe after a few days. Maybe after one lonely night. She assumed this was temporary, another predictable cycle where the man pulls away for attention. Then comes rushing back the second anxiety hits him. But you didn't. And now her mind has to deal with something uncomfortable. You're no longer behaving the way she expected. That changes everything. Because the moment someone becomes emotionally unpredictable, they immediately become harder to mentally categorize. And when the brain can't categorize something, it keeps returning to it over and over, trying to figure it out. That's why she may suddenly revisit old conversations. Not because she's deeply attached yet, because she's searching for clues. She rereads your messages, looking for hidden meaning. She studies your last interaction, wondering if she missed a sign. She checks your activity, your stories, even the smallest detail that might reveal whether your attention still belongs to her. And beneath all of that is one silent question she'll never say out loud. Do I still have access to him? That's the real shift happening here. A few days ago, she assumed your attention was guaranteed. Now she's no longer sure she ever truly had it. And uncertainty has a strange effect on attraction. It magnifies emotional focus. The less reassurance she gets, the more mentally present you become. Still, she usually won't reach out first. Not yet. Pride is still involved. Ego is still protecting her. So instead of direct contact, she starts looking sideways for information. Maybe she notices who's liking your photos. Maybe she watches how active you are online. Maybe she posts something carefully designed to trigger a response without making it obvious. And when nothing comes back from you, that's when frustration slowly starts replacing curiosity. By day 6 or 7, the emotional temperature changes completely. Now the silence isn't just noticeable, it's irritating. Because deep down, most people are comfortable when they understand where they stand. Even if the situation isn't perfect, certainty feels safe. But your absence removed certainty. Now she doesn't know what you're thinking. And when people lose emotional clarity, their imagination starts filling the gaps automatically. That's when thoughts begin creeping in that weren't there before. Did he lose interest? Did he meet someone else? Was I more emotionally invested than I realized? And here's where most men destroy the entire psychological shift they created. They panic halfway through the process. After a week of silence, they start feeling uncomfortable. They miss the attention. They want validation. So they send a casual message just to keep the connection alive. And the moment they do that, everything collapses. Because now she understands the silence wasn't confidence, it was strategy. The mystery disappears instantly. She relaxes again because the emotional uncertainty is gone. She no longer has to wonder where she stands with you. That's why patience matters more than people think. Silence only becomes powerful when it's emotionally real. If you disappear, but secretly hover around waiting for a reaction, she feels that energy. But when you genuinely detach and continue living your life, something very different happens. Your absence starts carrying weight. And the longer that uncertainty remains unresolved, the more it slowly transforms into fear. Not dramatic fear, subtle fear, the kind that appears late at night when distractions disappear. The fear that maybe she misunderstood your value. The fear that maybe you're emotionally slipping away for good. By day 8 to 10, that fear becomes harder for her to ignore. Now she's not just curious, she's uneasy, because your silence has lasted long enough to feel real, and suddenly you seem more important than before, even though you haven't done anything new. That's the irony of human psychology. Scarcity changes perception. People rarely obsess over what feels permanently available, but the second something becomes difficult to access, the mind starts assigning greater emotional value to it. You haven't changed. Her perception of your availability has. And that alone shifts the emotional dynamic. This is usually the stage where indirect behaviors start appearing. She may post things designed to attract attention without directly reaching out, a carefully chosen photo, a random quote, a song lyric that feels emotionally loaded. Sometimes she'll create tiny opportunities for contact that still protect her pride. An accidental message, a reaction that seems casual, a small opening designed to test whether you'll respond. But what she's really testing is simple. Are you still emotionally hooked? And if you react too quickly, the answer becomes obvious. That's why restraint matters here. Because the moment she senses she can still pull you back whenever she wants, the emotional tension disappears again. But if you remain calm, if you continue moving forward without chasing reassurance, something unexpected starts happening inside her. Regret begins quietly entering the picture. Not full regret yet, just small emotional flashes. Memories feel heavier now. Conversations replay differently. Moments she barely appreciated at the time suddenly carry emotional weight because they can no longer be recreated on demand. And by the second week, the silence stops being about your disappearance and starts becoming about what your absence is making her feel about herself. Because at this point, the silence has stopped feeling temporary. Now it feels personal. By day 15 to 17, she's fighting an internal battle she never expected to have. Part of her wants to stay composed, protect her pride, act unaffected, but another part of her keeps returning to the same uncomfortable thought over and over again. Why hasn't he reached out? And the longer that question goes unanswered, the heavier it becomes. This is usually the stage where the urge to contact you starts overpowering logic. Not because she suddenly lost all emotional control, but because uncertainty is exhausting. Human beings naturally seek resolution. We want clarity. We want emotional ground beneath our feet. And you've given her none. No reassurance, no explanation, no sign that she still has access to your attention. So she begins searching for indirect ways to reopen the connection without exposing herself completely. Maybe she posts something emotionally loaded late at night. Maybe she casually asks about you through mutual friends. Maybe she sends a message that appears random on the surface but carries a hidden intention underneath it, not because she fully wants you back yet, because she wants relief, she wants proof that the emotional door is still open. And this is where so many men lose everything they spent weeks building. The second they see effort from her, they rush back emotionally, they respond instantly, they become overly available again. They treat her small curiosity as full emotional investment. But those are two very different things. At this stage, she's still trying to understand whether she can pull you back whenever she wants, and if the answer is yes, the emotional tension disappears immediately. That's why emotional discipline matters here more than emotion itself. Because if you continue holding your center, something deeper starts happening inside her around day 18 to 20. The confidence she once felt begins collapsing quietly, not dramatically, quietly. For the first time, she starts seriously considering the possibility that you may never come back. And that thought changes the emotional equation completely. Now she's no longer asking, why is he quiet? Now she's asking, what if I actually lost him? That's when regret begins becoming real. She starts replaying moments differently now. Things she once overlooked suddenly feel important. Conversations hit differently in hindsight. Your attention, your consistency, your presence, all the things that once felt ordinary start gaining emotional value precisely because they're gone. And perhaps the most difficult thought of all starts creeping into her mind. What if another woman experiences the version of him I took for granted? That thought lingers. Because people rarely fear losing what they never valued. They fear realizing the value too late. By week 3, the emotional dynamic flips completely. She's no longer sitting back waiting. Now she's watching, planning, trying to understand how to reconnect without risking rejection herself. This is where her behavior often becomes more intentional. She may suddenly become more visible online. She may revisit places connected to memories with you. She may subtly remind you of inside jokes, shared moments, old emotions that once created closeness between you. And underneath all of it is the same hidden question. Do I still matter to him? But here's the part most men never understand. The real power was never in making her chase. It was in finally stepping out of the desperate cycle of needing constant validation. Because the moment you stop forcing connection, you finally see the truth clearly. If someone genuinely values you, your absence affects them. Not because you manipulated them, because your presence actually mattered. And if your disappearance changes absolutely nothing for them, that tells you something important too. Silence reveals reality faster than words ever can. By day 26 to 30, if her feelings were genuine, she usually stops relying on indirect signals altogether. The emotional pressure becomes too strong to hide behind pride forever. Now the contact becomes more direct, more intentional. She reaches out with real energy behind it. Maybe the message sounds casual, but the effort isn't casual. Maybe she suddenly wants to reconnect over something small. Maybe she brings up a memory only the two of you shared because she's trying to emotionally reopen the space between you. And what's interesting is this. The woman who once expected you to chase endlessly is now afraid of being ignored herself. That's the emotional reversal silence can create. Not because silence is magic, because absence forces people to confront emotions distraction used to hide. Now, does this mean every woman comes back? No. And that's important to understand. Some people will let you go. Some connections were never deep enough to survive distance in the first place, but that's exactly why disappearing reveals so much. It removes illusion. It exposes whether the connection was real, or whether you were simply carrying the entire emotional weight alone. And maybe that's the deeper lesson in all of this. The goal was never to make someone obsessed with you. The goal was to stop abandoning yourself just to keep someone emotionally interested. Because the moment you truly understand your own value, you stop chasing people for reassurance. You stop forcing attention. You stop negotiating for consistency. And strangely enough, that's usually the moment people begin seeing your worth most clearly, not when you're trying to hold on, but when you finally become willing to let go in silence.